Okay, so this third section in our reading this week, we've got Alma chapter 1 and Alma chapter 4. And there's a couple of passages of scriptures to focus on in these chapters, but essentially what we have here is we have members of the church prospering. And then we have the reaction to those blessings, those temporal blessings, and how people react to those. We're covering here in the history of the first couple chapters of Alma about a 9-year period. So we have about a 9-year period here, and you remember Alma. He took his followers, and they had this miraculous baptism where they baptized 200 plus people in the waters of Mormon. You've got a little bit of dissension coming with the future generation. They have this amazing experience where they are miraculously released from captivity and just having just great experiences. They're giving all credit to God, and they're progressing, and God blesses his people, and they're blessed in many ways. And so what we're focusing on here, the title, what we're going to discuss today, true disciples of Jesus Christ do not set their heart upon riches. So we're going to go over both examples. The bad examples, remember, we said this I think in the very beginning of our videos. The Book of Mormon is very black and white. There's not a lot of gray area in this book. And so we're going to see a black and a white example, two opposite examples here of how people react to prosperity. So
yeah, we're going to start with the bad example. First, we can end on the good. But in chapter 4, this is kind of where it talks about the people and what they do with their prosperity. At this point, they had contentions with the Lamanites, and a lot of people were killed. And but they were able to kind of come into the church. Alma baptized thousands more people, and they began to have some peace and prosperity at this point. But with that prosperity came some pride. We see in verse 6 of chapter 4. It says, I'll summarize here. In the 8th year of the reign of the judges, the people began to wax proud because of their exceeding riches. It says their fine silks, their fine twined linen, their gold, all manner of precious things that they had attained from their industry. It goes through and lists
many
everything.
flocks and herds.
They began to prosper exceedingly. But this prosperity, it says in 7, was the cause of much affliction to Alma. Yea, many of the people whom Alma had consecrated to be teachers and priests and elders over the church. Yea, many of them were sorely grieved for the wickedness which they saw had begun to be among their people, because with this pride and with this wealth, they began to be lifted up in the pride of their eyes, and to set their hearts upon their riches and upon the vain things of the world, that they began to be scornful one towards another, and they began to persecute those that did not believe according to their own will and pleasure. And it goes through and talks about the inequality that came up in the church and everything, because these people took their riches and became prideful. They began to lust after riches. They began to scorn those that weren't believing what they believed, or didn't have the riches that they had. And that pride kind of crept into their lives and in their hearts. And that's what turned them to cause grief in the church, and to cause them to cause contentions, and to just not be a good example of what a Christ-like disciple is.
I was kind of, it pricked me as we were reading this, was their heart, they set their heart upon riches. Yeah. I remember serving my mission, and during that time I interacted with lots of humble people that in light of the things of the world did not have a lot. And I remember just seeing this true sense of happiness, and this true sense of even like a humble worship and desire to serve. And I remember this one family in particular, the Campos family, and they were feeding the missionaries. And I remember I looked at my companion, and we were like, I don't think they have enough food to feed themselves. And but they were so giving and so service oriented. And I remember coming home from my mission, and I was in a conversation. I think Laura was actually there. We were dating at the time. And I just remember kind of sharing some of these stories from my mission and saying to them, like, I hope I'm never rich. I hope that I never have a lot, because I saw true discipleship in the hearts and then the lives of people that had nothing. And I remember bringing up, like, I mean, we all know the phrase, money is the root of all evil. And I remember my uncle kind of stopped me in my tracks there. And he kind of put me in my place and said, it is not money that is the root of all evil. It is the love of money that is the root of all evil. It is when we lust after the things of the world that, and then he goes on to saying, having money can actually help you to bless tons of people. And your stewardship over the things of the world, you can use that to bless many. And so we're going to transition from the bad example to a good example. And so we're going to go back into reading. We're now going to flip back 3 chapters. We're in chapter 1. And we're going to read and stop points. I don't know, do you have anything else to say about kind of the bad example?
No, I mean, yeah, it's just interesting when you go through, like you were saying, in the world. I served my mission in Brazil, and we taught people with dirt floors, that didn't have, like you say, anything, but were the most giving, charitable, loving people. But then I also remember this area that I was in, it kind of had, it was a poorer area, but then there was this little outlier area that had more wealthy people, and one of the members of the church was in that area. And they were able to have a big house. They were wealthier, but they used that wealth to bless the members of the church. Like, they would have all their church activities at their house. They would bring everybody to their pool, kids that didn't even have real floors, to come swim at their pool. And like, they used that wealth. I saw on both sides, they used that wealth for so much good too. So it just depends on your mindset and where your heart is, like you're saying. And so you can see it on both sides. But now, let's go talk about the good that can happen. Let's
look at that example. So here we have, let's see where we want to kind of start with this. And so I love, it's the end of chapter 1. And so during this time we have lots of persecution, we have lots of false teachings coming in, but I love how the righteous respond to prosperity. So I'm going to read in, so basically same thing we read in the other ones. They're being blessed. They're receiving a lot of good. They're becoming industrious, and their industry is bringing them a lot. And then in verse 30, and thus in their prosperous circumstances, they did not send away any who were naked, or that were hungry, or that were athirst, or that were sick, or that had not been nourished. And they did not set their hearts upon riches. So there's that opposite, right? Therefore they were liberal to all, both old and young, both bond and free, both male and female, whether out of the church or in the church, having no respect to persons as to those who stood in need. And I just, such a powerful verse of scripture. But it comes back to this idea that to have wealth and to be blessed with temporal things opens up a door of opportunity. It is very hard to take in all people that stand in need when you do not have. And that's a beautiful thing that people that are wealthy and blessed with wealth have an opportunity to do. But the key comes to where our hearts are. How do we look at riches? Do we look at them as something we earned and something we deserve and something that is mine, mine, mine? Or do we see riches as God's blessings to us? He is the master of all riches of this world, and we are simple stewards over those things.
Like, are we not all bakers? And what we have is actually God's. It's like that whole thing. Are you looking inward or are you looking outward? When you're focusing inward, that's where the selfishness comes in. That's where it's, you want that, you have that pride, you want your riches. But when you're focusing outward, like Christ did, that's when you use that to bless other people.
So the question in this little section is how does this reading change your attitude on riches? How does it change your attitude on wealth and temporal things? But I kind of want to expand that question and just ask, what have you done in your life to help you to not set your heart on riches?
Because I feel like that's very easy to do. It's the natural man. It's like, it's naturally, I think, that natural man really wants those riches. You want to be taken care of. You want to have all of this for yourself. And so, like you say, what do you do to not feel that? What do you do to look outward?
So we'd love to hear from you so we can all learn together on how to basically just apply this principle into our lives.